So many moms feel stuck and isolated, like they've got to keep it all together and can't say how hard it really is. On Let's Get Real, we talk about the real stuff, motherhood, mental health, and everything in between, so you don't feel like you have to carry it alone anymore. Because in order to heal, we have to get real. If you're feeling overwhelmed, grab the Overwhelmed Moms Guide. It's totally free and made to help you feel like yourself again. The link is in the show notes. Let's jump in. There comes a moment in many women's lives when everything they've built on the outside no longer matches what's happening on the inside. They're strong, capable, calm under pressure, yet quietly carrying the weight of survival patterns, self-doubt, and emotional exhaustion. For so many high-achieving women, the question becomes, how do I lead myself with the same strength that I lead everyone else? Today, we're joined by Camilla Kahlberg, founder of She Leads, the authentic leadership movement, and a global leadership mentor for women in biotech, pharma, and HR. After decades in corporate roles at BP, Shell, and IBM, managing complex transformations, Camilla reached a breaking point in her personal life. A painful, drawn-out separation that escalated to the courtroom and ultimately required her daughter to testify, shattered every illusion she had about strength. That unraveling became her turning point. From surviving on the outside, she began rebuilding from the inside, learning emotional regulation, nervous system leadership, and how to show up with clarity and truth. Today, she helps women lead with authority without abandoning themselves. Camilla, thank you so much for being here today. I am very excited to talk about high achieving women and burnout that can often happen, but as well as how we can recover from burnout and the different things needed to bring us back to life. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Jenna. I'm super excited for what will unfold. I'm grateful to be here.
Awesome. Well, as we get started, I would love it if you could just take us back to that season of survival and share what made you realize that something had to change.
Every time I ask that question, I have to still sit with this because it was the mirror moment. But the moment where I really was realizing that I had to shift. When I was in court, my daughter has just been in the room next door testifying and witnessing why she wouldn't see her dad. And they came back and I had a nervous breakdown. And in that room, we talked about energy, that energy travels, and also that if I do not shift, I would not be able to help my daughter reset. Even when I told this years ago, very different Camilla, but my body's still responding because in that moment, my voice was saying, Camilla, you get to go out. It cannot be true that you're discussing this with lawyers and judges. And so few people understand what energy is. So few people understand that if you do not show up as your highest version, it will also impact their children. So I got this very strong calling in this very chaotic environment. So you get to go out and do the work. But obviously I had to do the work myself. But that was a mirror moment. And I realized that when I come and acting from my highest self, the immediate results are seeing my daughter, how she is, how she relaxes, how easy it is in the mornings. So that work is worth the whole world.
Yeah, it's interesting what I find so often when I have talked to different women who've had these points of something has to change. The way that I've been going about life and operating, it doesn't work anymore. So much of it did start for many women when it was the reality of like, how is this impacting my kids? And for the sake of my kids, I've got to figure this out for myself. And then from there, it's this unraveling and a ripple effect of what comes from that. So I appreciate you sharing that because I would imagine too, with the positions that you've held in the corporate world and being just in those spaces, you learn how to armor up. And there's this expectation of how you're expected to show up in a room. And then even before that, growing up, we develop these ways of trying to protect ourselves and ways of keeping ourselves safe. And so a lot of times for high achieving women, it can look like they're very strong. Like I'm the strong one. I can handle it all. I don't need to ask for help. I will figure out a way to get it done. And if it's meant to be, it's up to me. I'll find a way. But then eventually becomes way too much and our body gives out. Or in the situation you found yourself where you're like, I had this breakdown. It no longer could my body handle this. And I know you work with a lot of women who are in these different professions that have a lot on their plate. So I would imagine you've seen this a lot. Could you speak to just some of that, of what you see with women who are high achieving, but they feel the pressure and the weight of that? And even just kind of demystifying strength. What is strength?
Or should we start there? Because what you said is it resonates so much what I see in my world. And you can only take your clients and meet the clients where you realize you've been yourself. And also in my world, I wore tons of masks and everything was amazing from the outside. But I was wobbling within, and that was not strength. It was, I call it performing character the more I do this work.
Wow.
To strength, I think it's also come by blueprints and what we inherited, but strength is really in my world, and why I see the leadership is evolving, is to be so vulnerable. Brené Brown talks about that, but being vulnerable enough to honor what is going on within, and then elevate, and then also ask for help. That's also a strength, because success is never built on a one-man ship. It is done together. And the more we are vulnerable, the more people actually trust you. Because as you mentioned also, it's human. People I feel such a relief when I say, we got a human moment. I learned that from Regan Hillyer. Also sometimes have a human moment. We are all humans with emotions. But for me, an emotional intelligence is, how fast are you at reading yourself, why you allow yourself to be triggered, and then come back into balance. That for me is strength. And when we come to burnout, it was so interesting because I had a conversation about this not long ago. Burnout there can be different pathways into burnout, what I see. But burnout comes either from, I'm not meeting your expectations, I cannot even be present, or we come from people pleasing, a pattern we have from home. So we say yes to way too many things, and I keep pushing out my own task, like till 10, 11 in the evening or early morning. And then we don't perform as we should. It's also a downspiral to burnout. And then that we don't believe that we're good enough. And that's one of the less known, because I get to sit with this when we talk about it in one-to-one rooms. That's what women dare to share. I don't feel I'm good enough. What will they say? Will they judge me? Which is certainly also a big pressure. But we get to learn to accept that we are good enough. There's many pathways into burnout, but it's how do I want to be in this moment? So that's good news, is there's also ways out to avoid burnout. Yeah.
Yes. It's helpful to see and hear you describe what this looks like and how it isn't just one way into this. There are many ways that this evolves and takes shape. One of the things that you said that stood out to me was it's helpful to demystify strength and really break it down to define what it actually is and what it's not. Because you said that what we perceive as strength is actually performance, and just how true that is, because then what happens is we feel the weight of these expectations. Oh, well, I have to do these things. And we operate from that place of performing and perfecting and all the stuff. But then internally, which is what I hear you describing, is there's this difference. There's these external things going on and then internal things. So while we may be performing and trying to be perceived as being strong, internally we're breaking down. And a lot of times we don't realize it. We don't even know what to pay attention to, because unfortunately so many women, we become disconnected from our bodies. We become disconnected from what is happening inside, the emotions coming up, what we need. We're disconnected from our heart, from all of the things that give us signals that are saying, hey, warning, 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 something's off. You need to pay attention. Oftentimes, we don't even know that that's going on or to look for that until we're at a level 10. And oh my gosh, it's on fire. But then we could have looked back and been like, how many signs were going on? But we just dismiss and minimize the importance of what is going on internally in our inner world. And when I was going through your bio and just doing some more research on you, I love how you described for yourself this journey was rebuilding from the inside out. And it's so dismissed, and we don't value that enough as a culture and just in general. It's everything's external because that's what we see. But then the thing is, it breaks down and it doesn't work anymore. So we have to change our approach and the way that we go about life, right? So I'm just really glad that you did speak to that. And the other thing that stood out to me that I just want to say really quick is how you defined strength as asking for help. Being vulnerability, you brought up Brene Brown, which she talks about so much. And that's the exact opposite. We think that if we admit we need help, there's so much shame that comes with that. And then we tie it to our self-worth. If I have to ask for help, that means that I am not good enough. I'm not worthy of, I have to constantly prove, which keeps us on the hamster wheel of performing. Anyway, I gathered that from what you're saying.
It's so true. May I just, because it was so, you're such an expert, because can we ever be expert in my world, but you're such a star in summarizing, and just want to acknowledge your skill. And what you just summarized about proving, we're questioning our worth, I cannot ask any questions if I don't have the answers. Well, it comes from what we have inherited from, because we're all born naked, right? But so I'm going deeper into the character that we're playing in this movie and reality transurfing about the blueprints that we inherited. But there's something, and I think that is a shift. It's going on, and I hope the wave is getting bigger and bigger. Is that you said there was a lack of consciousness or lack of understanding of what it meant to go to work and have a work to prove. Because when we grew up, when our parents grew up, and our grandparents, the time was different. So it's really, I'm an employer, I have this factory, and I can fire you. But the world has changed, which also means that at high performers, when we are high performers, we are really burning out. So it must be old days where we have to question our self-worth, because when we forget, this is so, I've been there. We forget how amazing we are and allow other people to judge how good I am. But really, we should focus on our nervous system, that inner noise, that clutter that tells us that we're not good enough, because then we're not performing, we're not showing up as powerfully as we can, because that voice is making us small.
Yes, that's a really good point.
It is so important, and I'm so glad that you segued it in, because it's where most people are not yet aware. You say we have not been taught in school. I don't think I haven't been taught in school. I had to learn from what I've been going through in life to read my nervous system and reset it in the moment. But so many high performers have not had that training. Yeah. And then even though they say, okay, I'm going to have this meeting and I know everything, but if then the other person is toxic or is feeling his or her feelings, then we consume all those feelings and it's all about us, and then we don't perform. So sometimes it's about surviving, that we have to prove that we're good enough, but it's that so many people burn out. So the next level is you are good enough. Reset your nervous system and learn what energy is all about, and read other people, help other people. So it's a beast. I love that beast. Moving, evolving, and the more the conversation to be curious about continuous self-development and growth. I can't remember. I heard something very recently about adults stop growing, but we should not stop growing. If we want to take our career to the next level, if we want more time freedom, if we want financial freedom, then we get to grow. Enjoy more of life.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. I'm, again, so glad that you're speaking to this. One of the initial thoughts that's coming to mind is how often there's this belief, right? Because, okay, for high achievers, women, what tends to happen is, you're right, like we develop these coping mechanisms, these ways of going through life, and it does for a time help us get to where we are, right? That's what I think can be very challenging, is where we look back, but this has worked for me, until it doesn't, and then it breaks down. And there is often the fear that is going pre and post. Pre, how we've been operating, it's striving, improving, performing, but we're never secure with our value and our worth. It's always, we're looking for somebody else and what they say, or what award we get, or what milestone and mile marker. But then the shift that's required, there is fear that will have to be worked through, because this thing, well, if I let go of this way that I have learned to go through life, I've learned to cope, I don't believe I'll be able to succeed at these levels I have. How can I possibly sustain this? How could I be able to maintain the position I'm at, or like this get to these goals and enjoy time with my family and invest in my relationships, and then do that from a place of security where I'm no longer striving and proving my value, but I actually believe it doesn't change based on if I hit that sales, quota or anything like that. It's a huge shift that is required, but there is this level of like beliefs that we have to work through, and emotions that come up. And so when you work with clients and you're mentoring these women, what does that shift look like? Like, what do you start with, especially when it comes to emotion regulation and nervous system regulation? Like, what do you help them with as they're transitioning and learning to let go of the old way of living and move towards a new way of being in their daily lives?
I love that question, because it's all about upgrading our being, upgrading our nervous system. So it's very practical. They bring up a situation, and it's very interesting because we all do it, right? It's his fault or her fault. But and then why did you? Then they played small. But then whatever happened, and I didn't say it, I got aggressive. I always fought and I couldn't think. I sleep at night and all that stuff. But what I do is to take them into the inner world, because the moment they connect with their fears, the thoughts that they believe to be true, and I say, how true is that? That is really the muscle that you have to prep out or start practicing. Be so curious about what you're telling yourself to be true, because I can share everything with your audience, whether they believe in me or in their own voice. So that the voice has more power over you and me, my own voice, than anyone else can guide me. The next step is that if you don't like that voice, the message, you are in control to shift that message, to choose a better story. I call it a flip it. Flip that message. If it doesn't serve you, flip it. And I trained it, and I tell my clients it took me 10 minutes to flip it first time. Why was I angry? All right, what story did I believe to be true? And I believe this story to be true. How true was it? I don't know, but it was really nice for me to believe in that story, right? Okay, find another story, because oftentimes we believe in our own stories that we create. The next step is then to scan your body, your nervous system. It's so interesting. I did some, when I started to be really curious about this a few years ago, I did it with my clients over summer. Tell me where in your body you feel tension. Even when we were in the room, you could feel it in your jaws, shoulders start to, your heart closing. And I asked them to become more conscious aware of what is going on in the body, because right now I'm so relaxed. We're in the room with you. I feel my body. I'm so relaxed. But if I wasn't relaxed, I would immediately be more tense. It's a green flag, as you mentioned. Relax. Be curious about what is going on. Because your nervous system is your strategy. Even though you know everything. But if you're not in alignment, in a balance, in a peace, your nervous system will take you to where you don't want to go.
That's so good. Yeah, it's really helpful in hearing this. Like practically, this is where you start, or it's the earlier phases in the process, because again, it's like learning to reconnect with ourselves, with our body, with our intuition. And even you said just, okay, what are the beliefs you have and what are the stories, and even challenging them, but what else could be true about that? And when you were sharing that is how helpful it is. What I've experienced is like living in the culture we do. It's really easy. We get so like focused on analytically, and it's all in our mind, and our brain can like override all of this. And then we just dismiss what is happening, our feelings, we dismiss what's going on internally, we dismiss what we need. Things don't work. It gets really clunky and it gets out of whack. And so paying attention, you said, to your body and saying, what am I feeling? Where am I feeling this? So if I'm feeling fear and I can notice it's a tight chest or shoulders are up, then it leads us to say, okay, now let's engage your mind. Okay, what are the thoughts that are coming with that feeling of fear? And then we can work to use your mind to process through what else could be true, or how to use some wisdom or discernment in these things to really work through the feeling, so we don't constantly hit these roadblocks. And why can't I get further? Why can't I get past this? I keep bumping up against it. Well, the way that we've learned to try and deal with it, it's not working. And there's an order to things. There's a way that this works. So that's what I'm hearing from you. We need to pay attention to the feelings going on, these emotions happening, what is going on in our body, because that signals to us first before we have the thought. Then we can engage our mind and think through this stuff, right? So I just am curious if you've have an example coming to mind of a woman you've worked with where you got to see some of this breakthrough with her, and then what that looked like, as well as just this recovery out of burnout, if you can think of anyone that comes to mind.
Yeah. So there's a lot of situations where clients show up and they're frustrated. I no longer, where I focus is on the person and helping the person become a better person, better version of themselves, which means, what are the beliefs? What do you believe to be true? How do you really want to show up in that room? And I let her vent, because it's important to feel your feelings and where you feel betrayed, dismissed, or whatever was going on. And then tie that to, when was the first time you got dismissed? From my mom. What happened? She didn't see me. She didn't recognize me. And now I have a client situation right now, and I take my clients back to that moment, because the body keeps score, and we heal, and she gets surprised. Maybe that was really what was in my body, why I reacted, because I was maybe seeking love or respect, and I wasn't from this authority figure. And as we heal, there are a lot of breakthroughs. She gets her nervous system reset, recalibrated, and she leaves with not a clean slate, because I don't know why that download came, but know how she wanted to show up, because our nervous system is only on fire if we believe something to be true that doesn't serve us. And I always ask my clients, and I do it myself, that who do you want to be in that room? And who were you in that room? It's two different characters. So if you wanted to be a trusted advisor, what do you need to grow? What tools do you need to have in your toolbox? How do you need to mentally set yourself up before you even knock on the door? Or what you do, go on Zoom. What do you need to do so that you show up with power? Sometimes I say, come stand up, and we do the power pose. It's so powerful to practice even the power pose. And they sit up as tighter, and suddenly the energy shifts, and you can feel the energy flowing. Where may I share where I'm taking them to the next? Because I am ever growing. Because also I'm blending in the manifestation from that. Everything that we got is a result of our thoughts. So we manifested this reality. We manifested this because there's something that I knocked on your door. Can I join your show? And if we didn't get what we want, we manifested that as well. It was the beliefs, and beliefs carry energy. So what I'm doing now is that I invite them to observe, who were you in that meet? because everything is consciousness. So the more conscious we become, the less we get attention to things that don't serve us. The easier it becomes to be in the room just to serve. It's very powerful.
Yeah, that is. It's good. I like the shift. You said the question you use of who do you want to be in the room and who were you? Because those two questions alone are very helpful in being, first of all, intentional and getting to say, yeah, this is how I want to show up. And then who I was, that's where we can identify some of those old wounds and the old way. Oh, I felt like I was 12 years old and I had a parent that was berating me or whatever it was. So then it helps to identify that's how I felt, but it doesn't have to stay that way. And there's this shift that happens and just not emphasize it enough, undervalued and underestimated how important it is to focus on the being, who we are and who we want to continue to grow into. It's just so essential because then again, there's the ripple effect of as we be, then we do, then we have, but often we get those all mixed up. It's trying to strive and prove ourselves and say, if I do this thing, then I'll have this thing, then I'll be somebody and prove it. Those are completely out of whack, and that's what gets us sick, and that's what gets us leads us to burnout and all of this. So that reverse is where we can finally recover and live life from a place of peace and rest and confidence, security, and letting go of feeling I have to strive, improve, and all of that. So I'm curious, as we're talking about the transformation piece of, hey, this is what it looks like to recover from burnout. We talked about some of the emotion regulation and nervous system regulation. Are there any other practical things that come to mind when you think of what people can do to recover from burnout and just the journey of what that looks like on the other side?
There's some very simple tools that I see people do not use. First off, make sure that you're in charge of your own calendar. And because they let other people decide whether to be available or not. So that is the first thing. Make sure that you have time to reflect every day. Make sure that you have time for lunch every day, and make sure that what your top 3 priorities are, or top 2 priorities are, that will generate revenue. And make space and time in your calendar to do those tasks and make them non-negotiable. Some people, because they're just so ready to change their life and have more time freedom and create greater results, they do it. It's scary to suddenly take control and not be available, as you mentioned before. Am I not then good enough? But it gets them to really focus on what they need to achieve when they have a fresh mind and not at 10 p.m. And they actually get respect. And when people then report it back, but they wanted to have this meeting where I have this time block. Say, how urgent is this? How urgent is this? We get to everything. I just been on a call where we talked about time. The only thing we don't get back is time. And most people do not know what's most important in their day-to-day. Get those priorities right, because you need filters. But it's so important. We all need filters, but when we don't know what is important, there is no filter.
Right.
And that can lead to burnout. Even that is an amazing tool that will reduce burnout. And we get to also remember that we are in charge. Very few people, I had to do the training and take personal mentoring, upgrading my coaching skills to really understand the power of no. We get to say no. I train my clients, you get to say no 9 out of 10 times tomorrow. And only say yes to what's really important. Because when we say yes to everything, we forget to actually say yes to ourselves and our time. That's another very important tool. Honor yourself. I don't think people honor themselves enough, love themselves enough, respect their own time enough, be everything for everyone else, but not for themselves. And if you have more tasks on your plate and your team is not performing because they are also under the weather with a lot of priorities, that's where the most important conversation comes in. Is that what needs to go. And if the company do not know, or the SVP or the CEO do not know what's most important, now it's time to discuss and agree what needs to be focused on and what needs to let go. And I see this, Jenna, so many times that people do not know what's most important and also do not protect their time. Yeah.
Yes, that is so empowering and very practical as far as a place to start. And you're right, for a lot of people, I can see it for sure, even in myself, in some of my, when I'm more sick and unhealthy and unwell mentally, because when I'm thinking of like how many people do not know what's important for them, it's because we feel, for me, I call myself a recovering people pleaser. Recovering from that, I can feel the pull of being, I know what's important to them. I know what they're wanting, but learning to pay attention to myself and saying, this is what's important to me. And then valuing that, then prioritizing it. That's hard to do. It's hard because it does require boundaries. It requires space. It requires time to sit and think and pay attention and dare to even write it out and be vulnerable enough to say this matters. And that means I'm going to disappoint people or upset them or they'll feel mad at me and whatnot. But this is because it matters to me. It's a whole reprioritizing and it's relearning how to operate in this way, but we have to get our reps in. We have to practice. And I love what you said about being in charge of your own calendar, because that's also a reframe. Yeah, how often do we see stuff gets filled up and it's because we're not saying no enough and we're saying yes to all these things, but we don't actually want to do them. We feel we are obligated and we have to. And when that again you have to have time and you have to break this apart, tease it apart, break it down and like rework this. And like, why did I do that? Why am I thinking I am obligated to do these things? What is that costing me in these other ways? So I'm really glad you shared this. And I wish that we could even have more time to talk. Maybe we'll do another episode to expand and keep going on this topic, because I've really enjoyed getting to talk to you about this. But as we're coming to a close, can you share, Camilla, where people can find you to connect with you and learn more?
Yeah. So I have a YouTube channel with different training, obviously videos. So go to that if you want. Camilla Kahlberg. I also post educational content on LinkedIn on a daily basis, because what we're talking about is so important for me to share my own learnings and tools. And then my website, Camilla Kahlberg, where we have different free resources, also run some intensives, some opportunities, short workshops, and so on. So yeah, different ways to reach out and different ways to grow with other people and women who also want to have more time freedom, because at the end of the day, that's those I serve. Once you have great results and also have more time to what also matters in life.
Yes. Oh man, that's so good. And thank you. I'm so glad that you have those resources available. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for being on today and making the time. I'm really, really glad we got to have this conversation. I know it's certainly helped myself and brought even more insights to the different experiences I've had. So I know that it's going to help other women who are listening to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, if this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And remember that you are not alone. Thank you so much for listening, friend. I cannot wait to talk with you next time. Thanks for listening to Let's Get Real. If you've been feeling stretched thin, stuck in survival mode, or like you've lost yourself in motherhood, I made something just for you. It's called the Overwhelmed Mom's Guide, and it's totally free. Inside, I walk you through simple steps to help you reconnect with who you are, find a bit more breathing room in your day, and start to feel like you again. You can grab it now. Just click the link in the show notes. You don't have to keep doing this alone. Let's take the next step together.